Hello and welcome to the Teacher Chris Learn by Play Piano series. This is lesson 7 in the series. Now last week we started on seesaws and that one was dealing with the slur. Now it's a slow song, it's very pretty with the duet, and the slur just makes it very connected sounding and makes it flow really nicely. The next song this week, though, is going to have the slur in it, but it's going to be a much faster piece. Let's go ahead and turn the page over to just a second. Now you can see the top of the page here is dedicated to something called the second. It's an interval. We're also going to be doing thirds today in just a couple of pages. So pay attention to this part right here, and when we get to the thirds, it'll make even more sense. So first of all, a second is really just the distance between the note that you're on and then the very next note up above it. So we always count whatever note we're playing as 1, and then when we go to the next note above it, that's 2, and we would call that a second. Let me show you on the piano here. So here's a C, and we would just count 1 if we're trying to figure out what the interval is between C and then whatever the next note's going to be. So we have C, and we're going to go up 1 note to D, but we count 1, 2. Now the thing is that there's also a third interval, and we're going to deal with it right now, even though it's a couple of pages later. So we have C, and then D would be the second, but right here, a third is an E. So that right there, that interval or that distance is called a third. Like that. And if you can spot a second or spot a third rather quickly, you can actually read music a whole lot quicker. Now, the very first line of this piece right here, let's check it out, is going to be a bunch of repeated notes. We have a C, 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 and then we're going to slur up to D. That just means that the C to the D, that's not going to be a C and then a break in the music and then a D. There's no silence in between those two notes. So it would look something like this. We have C, C again, but now we're slurring up to D. That means while the thumb is coming up, the second finger is going down like that. Now if we play it up to speed, it would be C, 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 D, like that. One important thing to note about seconds are that they're always going to be a line note to a space note or a space note to a line note. So you're looking at a line note that you're playing, and then you see that the next thing is the next space up. That's a second up. And then you're on a space note, and you see that the next note is going down to the line, the next line down, and that's a second down. So that's a good way to spot a second right away and know to just either go up a note or go down a note. Just keep that in the back of your mind for when we get a couple of pages ahead here on another piece that deals with intervals. So let's go ahead and run through all of the note names here. You'll notice that there are no half notes, no dotted half notes, no whole notes. This is just straight quarter notes throughout the whole entire piece. That's actually going to make it a little bit fun for us a little bit later on. So let's try this out. First of all, C position here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 C's up for my right hand, and then 1, 2, 3 C's up for my left hand in C position, and we're covering C, D, E, F, and G. 1, 2, ready, play. We have C, C, now slur to C, D, 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 E, 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 F, and then F, F, F to G. Now left hand comes in with C, C, now C to D, now D, 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 E, now E, E, E to F, and then F, E, B, C. Now this piece is supposed to be played moderately fast. So we can actually play around with the tempo on this one by first starting out kind of slow and then working our way up. Now I'm going to put this at the end of the video at 70 and then 100 beats per minute, but I encourage you to try to go faster than 100 once you feel really, really comfortable with 100 beats per minute. Okay, go ahead and pause the video and play through all of the notes here, trying those slurs out, but don't play this fast just yet. You'll need some time to work up the speed of this piece, and we'll be able to do that throughout the week. I'll see you in a minute. So I'd like to go over how to increase the speed using the metronome. It's a really good trick to it that I like to use with my students. So what you do is you start slow, of course, so like 70 or 80 beats per minute, somewhere around there. And then you go up 10, and then you try it at that speed and work it up to that speed. And then you go up 10 and up 10. And that works really well with like a digital metronome or one that's on your keyboard. You can just keep bumping it up 10 beats per minute. So from 70 to 80, and then to 90, and then to 100. Now, if you are on a mechanical metronome, what you should do is just 2 clicks. That's almost 10. So 2 clicks, 2 clicks, and just keep increasing the tempo until you get up to the speed that you want to be. However, this is the trick to it. Don't just go up 10 beats per minute and keep working on that faster tempo if it's not working out for you. So for instance, I'm at 70 beats per minute, and then I go up to 80, and that works out just fine. And then I go to 90, and oh my gosh, I cannot do 90. It is not working out for me. So what you do is if 90 is just very difficult and it seems impossible, don't go back to 80. Instead, just go back 5 beats per minute. Or on the mechanical metronome, you just go back 1 click. So you're always increasing a large amount, but then going back a smaller amount. And then once you get that smaller amount really good, let's say 85, then you bump it up to 95. And then 95 isn't working for you. Now you move it back to 90, and it sounded pretty good at 90. Then you try 100, and you just keep doing that up 10, back 5, up 10, back 5, until you get to the tempo that you want to play. So let's head on over to balloons. This is on page 37 here, and we have a new blue box to check out. Now remember with the slur, we had 1 or 2 or maybe even 5 or 10 notes that were slurred together, and we'd see a slur going over a bunch of different notes or different letter names. So like in the first line here, we see a D, an E, an F, all of those notes right there in that first line, they have a slur over top of them. And we know that's a slur because underneath that curved line is a bunch of different notes, a bunch of different letter names. Now what happens though if you have that line going to the same note? On this page we have a D to a D. The line actually changes all meaning. Instead of it being a slur, it's actually called a tie. And you can see at the very top of the page here, it says, when notes in the same line or space are joined by a curved line, we call them tied notes. What they mean by the same line or the same space is just if it's a line note or a space note. So all that means is if you have a C and then a line going to another C, that's called a tie, not a slur. If you have a G with a line going to another G, that's called a tie, and it's not a slur. And you treat it differently. You treat it like the plus sign. So if you have a note that is 4 counts long, tied to another note that's 4 counts long, you actually hold it down for 8 counts. This is how we get notes that are longer than just 1 measure long. So if you look at this piece here, we're in 3/4 time, and the very last 2 notes are Ds, and there is a little line right there going from the D to the D, and that little line means to tie those 2 together. And we count it a very specific way. So we have a D tied to another D here, and that's 3 counts plus 3 counts. That equals 6 counts. However, we don't count to 6. That's actually the improper way to do it. Instead, what we do is we count D, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and you can see up there how I like to notate it. And go ahead and write that into your music if you haven't already. Now, underneath those two Ds is a whole other line that's encompassing all of the other notes within that line, and that's just a slur. And what it's trying to tell you is slur the D, E, F, G, F, E, and then the D at the very end. Just slur all of those notes from one to the next. No breaks between the notes. So let's go ahead and play through this. We're going to say the counts as well out loud. This is a slow piece, just like Seesaws is, and the duet is fantastic on this one. So I really encourage you to try that at the end of the video this week. Now it starts with the left hand, finger number 4, which is the ring finger here. I'm going to start with the D, and it's 1, ready, play. D, E, F, E, F, E, D, E, F, E, 2, 3, right hand, D, E, F, G, F, E, D, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and then repeat, D, E, F, E, F, E, D, E, F, E, 2, 3, right hand, D, E, F, G, F, E, D, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Now you may be wondering, why do I have to hold that note for 6 counts? It doesn't really make sense to just hold it for 6 counts. It doesn't really add to the music at all. What is going on there? Well, because of the duet part, what's happening is you play a D and you hold it for 6 counts in total. However, if you look at that little bracket at the bottom there, the 1, you can see all of those notes underneath that little bracket right there. We call that the first ending. You don't need to know that right now. Eventually, you'll see that in your music. But underneath my part right there, underneath the first ending bracket, there's a bunch of notes right there. And all of those notes that I play equal 6 counts in total. So it's basically like you're passing off the torch to me to play some music for just a little bit. So you're playing the melody and you're playing some beautiful stuff while I'm just accompanying you. But then when it gets to that last moment when you're holding it for 6 counts, I finally get to shine and I get to play 6 counts worth of music, and I play a whole bunch of stuff while you're just holding the note down. So the hard part about that is going to be counting and making sure that when you do the repeat sign and you get to the first measure again, you come in right when I come in. In the duet part, I will definitely say your part out loud while I'm playing my part. That way it'll help you just a little bit more. Okay, go ahead and pause the video for balloons and just practice it for just a little bit. Make sure that no matter what, you say the D, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and then do the repeat. And I'll see you in a minute. Hope that went well. This one is a slow piece, but the left hand I think is a little bit complicated because it is going up and down in a bunch of different seconds. It goes up a second, down a second. There's a lot of different ups and downs in the left hand of this piece. So that one is a part that you may want to focus on just a little bit. Let's turn the page to page 38 here now and check out who's on third. So who's on third? As promised, we have a new interval and it's the third. Now thirds are fantastic to find in music because they're really easy to spot and it means something very specific. So if you are on your thumb and you spot that there's a third interval up to the next note, that's actually just skipping over this finger and going to this finger. So a third, you can think of it as a skip. So we go 1 to 3, or maybe it's 2 to 4, or 3 to 5. And what we're doing is we're finding 2 notes that are an exact third apart, and there's the trick to it. So we know with seconds that it's a line note going to a space note, or a space note going to a line note, and that's going to indicate right away that we're doing seconds. They're going to be right next to each other, a line to a space or a space to a line. Now with thirds, all that is it's going to be a line note going to the very next line up or the next line down, or it's going to be a space note going to the very next space up, very next space down. Let's look up there at the top of the page. Now you can see that the first note is a C in the left hand there at the top of the page. And then we're going to the next space note up, which is E, and we're skipping over D. So it's C to an E. And it's really nice to see that because you know to just skip a finger in your hand. Let's check this out. I'll put my left hand up here in C position. I'm going to play that C first. And I know to skip my fourth finger here and just go to my third finger because I see it's going from a space note up to a space note. And then the very next interval is going into the next measure here, E to G. That E right there goes up to a G. See that? Same thing with the right hand. Let's move over to the treble clef now. C, middle C, is considered a line note. It has a little line through it, and that is a line note. And it's a C going up a third to an E. We're skipping over the space note D. And then we're going up from that E right there that we just played to the next measure, and it's the next line up, which is a G. Now, if you have some colored pencils, you can go ahead and circle these thirds. It may help you a little bit, or put a little star by them, something like that. I went ahead and did pink and orange for going either up a third for pink or going down a third for orange. Let me show you here. You can see that the very first third is just a C going up to an E, and then a D going up to an F. Now, on the second line here, we have the same kind of intervals. We have thirds. The last two measures are a little bit more complicated because we have a couple of E's here. It goes up a third to a G, but then right back down a third to an E, up a second to F, down a third to D, and then a C right there. Now you can read these notes outright and just say E, E, G, E, F, D, C. But then you can also read it just by the interval. You can know that you're on an E to start with. You play another one, it's on the same exact space. Then you skip up a third. Let's play it on the piano. E, E. Now we're going to skip up a third. That just means skipping a finger. Skipping back down a finger to E. Now we know it's going up a second because it's a space going to the next line up. Down a third to D. And then that's going to be a second from that D to the C. It's a line note to a space note right there. All right, let's run through this, saying the letters and the counts out loud. I'm going to run through this really slowly, but this one can also be played rather fast. We're going to be doing 70 and 100 beats per minute at the end of the video. So it starts with the right hand finger number 1 on C. So we have C, C up to an E, 2, and then D, D up a third to F, 2, E, E up a third to G, 2. Now we play the G again and we go down a third. G, down a third to E. We go up a second to F, down a third to D. Now the left hand comes in with C, C up a third to E, 2. Going to D now. D, D up a third to F, 2. And then now we're going to an E, another E, jump up a third to G, back down a third to E, F, down a third to D, and then we finally have a C at the very end there. Go ahead and pause the video, play through this a couple of times, see if you can get a handle on it, and I'll see you in a minute. How'd you do? This one is going to be a little bit complicated at the very last line. The last two measures are a little bit weird because we're jumping up a third and down a third and then up a second and then down a second and things like that. There's a lot of movement in that left hand at the very, very end. So take your time with it, practice it slowly, and see if you can work it up to the right speed this week. Now's the time to pull out the assignment pad and write down this week's assignment. We have here on page 36 the song Just a Second. And Just a Second is going to be dealing with just going up seconds or down seconds, which is just basically the next note up or the next note down. Do also work on the slurs, connecting those notes that are slurred, for instance, the C to the D in the first measure. I also want you to practice this piece with the metronome a whole lot, not just with the play along. I'd like to see if you can build the speed of this piece up and see how fast you can actually play it. That means the sky's the limit. However fast your metronome goes, try to get to that point. You might be surprised at how fast you can actually play already. Also, it's just really fun to play fast and see how fast you can go. This is just a really fun piece to do it on. So I hope you enjoy this one a lot. Now on page 37, we have balloons. This one is all about counting ties, and that's going to be the biggest challenge on this one. It's not a fast piece, but I do want you to try to get it to the point where you can play it with the duet properly. That means that when you get to that D, you're going to have to say out loud for a while, D, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Remember that there's a repeat sign on this one. So after you play the D, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, the very next count is going to be in the left hand, and it's going to be a D. Finally, on page 38, we have Who's on Third, and this is our first look at jumping over fingers, doing finger skips, and looking at the third interval. So play this one and practice this one slowly at first. Make sure you really grasp how to go from one note to the next, skipping over a finger. And keep in mind that the fourth finger and the fifth finger might not do well at first, but just keep practicing it slowly and you'll get it. Also, I'd like you to take note of the fact that the last two measures of this piece need extra care and extra attention. So when you get to those last two measures, go ahead and work through them when you're playing just a run through of the piece. But then also just target those two measures and play those two measures over and over and over again until you feel like you really, really have them. A really great way to practice this is play the last two measures a bunch of times until it sounds really good, and then go to the beginning of the line and see if you can do the last four measures of the piece. Then you go to the beginning of the piece and see if you can play it all the way through with the left hand really doing well in those last two measures. And that's your whole assignment for this week. I'll go ahead and do the play-alongs and the duets now. Hope you enjoyed this one, and I'll see you next week. 1, 2, ready, play. C, 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 D, 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 E, 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 F, 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 G, C, 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 D, 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 E, 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 F, F, E, D, C. 1, 2, ready, play. 1, ready, play. D, E, F, E, F, E, D, E, F, E, 2, 3, right hand, D, E, F, G, F, E, D, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, repeat, D, E, F, E, F, E, D, E, F, E, 2, 3, D, E, F, G, F, E, D, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. 1, ready, play. D, E, F, E, F, E, D, E, F, E, 2, 3. Right hand, D, E, F, G, F, E, D, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. D, E, F, E, F, E, D, E, F, E, 2, 3. Right hand, D, E, F, G, F, E, D, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, ready, play. C, C, E, 2, D, D, F, 2, E, E, G, 2, G, E, F, D, C, C, E, 2, D, D, F, 2, E, E, G, E, F, D, C, 2. 1, 2, ready, play. One thing about balloons, just like some of the previous pieces, the duet should be played an octave higher. One, ready, play. D, E, F, E, F, E, D, E, F, E, 2, 3, D, E, F, G, F, E, D, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, D, E, F, E, F, E, D, E, F, E, 2, 3, D, E, F, G, F, E, D, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. 1, ready, play. I hope you enjoyed this week's lesson. Good job today. You're going strong into reading music and reading intervals and all sorts of other great stuff right now. So keep it up, keep it going, and I will see you next week.